It was demonstrated by one of the people who said, this gentleman there, talked about, going to the protest of the Pope rally. If I may say so, this, I wasn't there, I didn't approve of the protest because there are various things around it I think are complete guff. One of them is the fact that people love saying they went to the protest of the Pope thing. The Pope, the sort of, Pope's not on board with gay marriage. I'm a gay man, I'd love to have gay marriage approved by the Catholic Church. But, they're not going to. Meantime, I really, really wish that people would reserve their ire for the people who don't just want to stop me marrying, but want to throw me off a cliff. Much better way to spend your time. But of course people love it because they think, oh, I'll attack the Islamists, but then to be allow myself to do that, I can attack the Pope to show I'm not a racist. Show me a Monsignor, grab me a cardinal, and I can attack them because that will allow me. This is left-wing nonsense. Again, paedophile priests, you said. If you'd have just stood there and said, I'm trying to protect Muslims from paedophile imams, people go, oh, how Islamophobic. And actually, in that case, it probably would be. But you say paedophile priests and smear the Catholic priesthood, and it's not a problem. Thirdly, finally, getting toward the end, a lot of this problem comes down, and the question we didn't get onto tonight, the fact is this: at the end of the Second World War, the Nazi leaders were tried and executed. At the end of the Cold War, it didn't happen. One of the biggest problems we have is the fact that it wasn't resolved. The people who did the largest massacres, the largest number of deaths caused by any movement in history, were not brought to trial. It's thought of as Guardian, the leading left-wing newspaper, had Richard Gott, one of its editors, a paid member of the KGB, a paid KGB agent who said, oh, it was just a bit of a laugh. Oh, and it still is just a bit of a laugh. Because if it's communism, it's a bit of a laugh. 70 million dead here and there, a bit of a laugh. And so on. So please, let's adjust our fucking values. And finally, this is a lot of this is a simple mental breakdown of the left. I hesitate to say this in the presence of Nick Cohen, who's chronicled this better than anyone. But the mental breakdown of the left. The fact that at so-called left-wing meetings, we have the obsessions with Palestine, for instance. There was one recently, again, I saw Gays for Palestine. Give me a break. If Gays for Palestine were in Palestine, they'd have to move to Israel. Just don't fall for this rubbish. And don't fall for it when it's coming from the right or the far right. And don't fall for it when it's coming from the left or the far left. Have some decency.
Wow, wow, wow. Douglas Murray. Ruffling his feathers a little bit. Usually don't see that. He's usually calm, collect, dissecting and slicing and giving his points with precision, pinpoint accuracy. Every once in a while, though, you do see him, get quite animated. And in this clip, he really was when he said, just get an effing, let's adjust our effing values. And what he was basically talking about was this virtue signaling that occurs. Sometimes on the right, but mostly definitely coming from the left. Leftists, liberals, progressives, right? This virtue signaling. Oh, okay, I don't want to be called a phobe. Put in your blank word, Jewish phobe, anti-Semite, Islamophobe, transgender phobe, against women, misogynist, any of those things. So when you start virtue signaling, you want to sort of balance and say, well, see, I also went after that group and I went after that group. As he said, basically with the Pope, he said, look, I know it's probably not going to happen within the Catholic Church that they're going to approve gay marriage. It may happen through governmental, decisions and policies and those kind of things, but it's not going to happen through the church. And he said, if he says, I would much rather you spend your time protesting the fact that if a gay person were happen to be in a Muslim-dominated country, I might be thrown off, Douglas says that he would probably be thrown off a cliff. And he's probably correct in that, or at the very least, beaten or jailed. I mean, that's what's going to happen in those countries because they don't have tolerance for others. And so Douglas is coming out there basically and saying that we need to readjust our values. We need to concentrate on the things that actually matter without all this other stuff, in the ethos, going on, and just trying to avert our attention from that by basically saying, hey, where are we going to spend our time in trying to get real reform and get real things done? Anyways, folks, that was just one of the clips. We got some more coming up in just a few seconds. But before we do so, I just want to let you know that you're watching the Dr. Nasir Shaikh Show. I'm your host, Dr. Nasir. Where what's on tap for today? Well, just like we said, Douglas Murray, some of his video clip compilations we're going to show you in just a few seconds. And you know what, folks? They obviously been there for hundreds of years, centuries, and the new influx of migrants and asylees and immigrants that have come in, Douglas is basically making the point that Western Europe has been pretty good in terms of inviting, being accepting, being very tolerant of this as this huge amount of influx of new languages, new people, new cultures, new customs, have come in. And I would just basically ask this point, what would happen in some of those countries if the reverse would have happened? Let's say that you had a country that was, let's say 30, 40 million people of a certain ethnicity, a certain faith. And all of a sudden, let's say you had 10 or 15 million Catholics and Protestants that migrated into that country. What do you think would have happened then? Would the country that would allow the migration of 10 to 15 million, we're talking at that point, okay, 20, 30, 40% migration of Western Europeans into an Eastern European or into an Asian country? I wonder how inviting those countries would be if it was the opposite direction shift of people moving from one, country to the other. Think about that. Anyways, let's get back to Douglas Murray.
When the failures of Islam throughout the world, the failures of all Islamic societies come here into Britain. Their intolerance of freedom of conscience, their intolerance of apostates, their intolerance of freedom of expression and freedom of speech, their intolerance of minorities, other religious minorities, sexual minorities, their intolerance of gays, their dislike and distrust of half of the population, women, and many, many other things. And the call, what's more, for a parallel legal system within Britain and European societies. This is monstrous. No other group behaves like this, asks for parallel laws. This is a fundamental problem, and it's one we're going to have to deal with. It's a problem between a society, Western Europe, that believes that laws are based on reason, and Islam that believes that they are based on revelation. Between these two ideas, I'm not sure there is very much compromise for Europe. It is not Europe that has let down its Muslims, but the Muslims of Europe that have let down Europe. This is not solely something which we have to say we can never reconcile. Of course we can reconcile this, but we need to be honest about it. We need to be frank about it, and we cannot avoid things just because they are unpleasant. And if there were one thing I would wish Muslims in Europe could learn today, as fast as possible, it would be this: that you have no right in this society not to be offended. You have no right to say that because you don't like something, you can commit violence, or you would like something to be stopped or censored. You have no right to have more hate laws or hate crime laws or hate speech laws just to defend Islam. You have to realize, the Muslims of Europe have to realize, that a society in which even your deepest feelings can be trodden upon is the only society worth living in. And the sooner we can learn that, the sooner that Islam can learn that within Europe, the better. It is not Europe that has failed its Muslims. It is Islam that has failed Europe. I'd argue Islam has failed its Muslims. Thank you.
So Douglas Murray making the statement that it's not Britain or Western Europe that has failed its Muslim immigrants or Muslim population. It is the Muslims themselves that have, brought this upon them. And what Douglas is saying is that if there is one thing that needs to be understood, whether it's the Muslim population coming in, Muslim immigrants, Asian immigrants, whoever the immigrant population is coming in, the migrant population is coming in, they need to understand, in terms of Western democratic liberal values, And one of those is that thing about freedom of speech, freedom of expression, and that you don't have, I mean, if somebody offends you, that's just tough. You've got to learn to accept being offended. It's going to happen. People are going to be offended maybe at the way you dress. Is it right? No. But is it going to happen? Probably. Maybe you get offended by the way other people dress. For example, some people coming from the Muslim countries don't like the way that the women are dressed. Well, you know what? That's just the way it is. You're going to have to, close your eyes, do something. I don't know. But if you're going to be offended by it, keep the offense to yourself. That doesn't give you the right to, hurl insults. It doesn't give you the right to become violent. It doesn't give you the right to, you can protest if you want peacefully. You have the First Amendment right to speak out, absolutely. And you can speak out if you're offended, but that's as far as you can go with it. And Douglas is absolutely 100% right. It doesn't matter what you are, what faith you are, what ethnicity, what background, what race, creed, color, nationality, whatever. Being offended is just part of being in a Western democratic society. You could say it's insensitive. You can say it's intolerant. You can say that it's biased. You can say that it's racist, it's bigoted. People saying all kinds of things. But as long as it doesn't cross into violence or the threat of violence, being offended is just part of life. Your family's going to offend you. You're going to offend your family. Anyways, folks, we appreciate you taking time to watch. You've been watching the Dr. Nasir Shaikh Show. We hope you enjoyed this clip of Douglas Murray. And if you like more of them, just check out our links above and below. I'll leave you with my final thought, which is, when you're right, you're right. And when you're left, you're wrong. Until next time, folks, take care and stay safe.